Ladies, gentlemen, and variations thereupon, welcome to another edition of Clutching Our Pearls. We're so happy to have you here because we are about to talk some turkey about how to get our kids back or how to understand our children better now that they have changed ever so slightly post-pandemic. Or we just had to spend a shit ton of time with them and now we see it. Today we are talking to Dr. Roseanne Kapana. And y'all, this is going to be so much fun. She is the founder of the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health. And we're talking about the impact that the pandemic has had on young people. Dr. Ro is changing the way that we view children's mental health. And she's known for brain-based solutions for struggling kids. Her work has helped thousands reverse the most challenging conditions such as ADHD, anxiety, autism, learning disabilities, you name it, Dr. Ro has been there. Additionally, she's the author of the first ever book on teletherapy activities for children and adolescent therapists. She wrote the books, The Teletherapy Toolkit, and It's Gonna Be Okay. With her books, she gives parents step-by-step solutions for their struggling kids. And on top of that, she's often featured on all the media outlets like Fox and CBS and NBC and New York Times. And lastly, Forbes called Dr. Ro a thought leader in children's mental health. Dr. Ro, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for this fancy schmancy introduction. I appreciate it. I'm pretty passionate about what I do.
Well, you're awfully schmancy. So
well, it's just a time I'm out there. I am trying to change the way we view and treat mental health because it's a shit show. And so we need a common sense approach and we need to give people tools. And that's what all my work is about, is giving people, common sense, accessible tools that calm the brain so we can have happy families.
Common sense. How common is that, Dr. Ro?
Yeah. I know it's not always prevalent in mental health, right? And people make mental health sometimes more complex than it is. And I think a lot of that is because they don't understand the signs that are there. And then we have a crisis. And there's the crisis, and then there's all that time before, which isn't always easy to make sense out of. But when you know what you're looking for, you then can take action on it.
So now that we have all had to spend more time with our children than we ever anticipated, and those that made more than one are most possibly regretting that decision, I think we've all seen changes in our children.
Yes.
And in ourselves that we either weren't expecting or we didn't see before, or we just don't fucking get. Like, why would you want to build a tiny town on a tablet? I don't. What's happening? A lot of what we see is parents are just so fucking frustrated that their kids are unmotivated, they're unfocused, and they have no idea what to do. And I want to draw a line because, listen, if you've ever seen me on stage or working, I'm a little intense. So I don't want this to be about how we can make our kids more like us, because I believe children are born with souls and destinies all their own, and we get to be a witness and a guide. And we'd better do a goddamn good job of it. What is that change that makes us see our children as unmotivated or unfocused? And let's start there, and then let's talk about what the hell we can do.
Yeah. So are kids struggling with attention, getting shit done on their own without somebody nagging them or cracking the whip? Yes. Some people call it motivation, but it's really, they're just not completing stuff. And so let's back it up. Okay. So first of all, there's no one easy answer. And yes, the pandemic was like fuel for the fire. This kindling was burning long before this pandemic. And what we're seeing now is just a worsening what was already there, right? I started the Global Institute of Children's Mental Health before. Oh, where's my magic wand? I know you were hoping for, I got one right here on my desk.
Now, do you use that just to whip the children? Or?
No, I use this. It's not the children. It's the parents. The parents think there is a magic wand. And let's back it up, right? And I'm a mom, and I'm going to tell you I'm a mom of 2 kids with special needs. 1 kid who has chronic Lyme PANS, and wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. I'll explain what that is, but basically struggle since he's 22 months old when he got bit. And I have another child with dyslexia, and you know what? They're doing great, and it's not easy. And guess what? The journey is hard, and that's just what it is. There was no magic wand. So people come to me because my people get better. I mean, they get dramatically better no matter what's going on, as long as not the kid, the parents are committed. And what does committed mean? Committed means that it's not a pill. It's that there's some work that's got to do it. You got to do the work 100%. And I always talk about shifting what you're doing from stuff that is like not working, right? You're not going to put a pair of shoes on over and over with a goddamn broken heel. You're going to get another pair of shoes. But yet when it comes to your kid, let's try 8 or 9 medications. Oh, nothing's helping them. Okay. So we have to start thinking differently. And so when we back it up, we are living a very stressed lifestyle and parents are overwhelmed. I want to validate that. I want to acknowledge that. It is some hard times right now. Mm-hmm. This pandemic was no joke for sure. How many women left the workforce? I mean, I think it was 1 million in the beginning of the pandemic left the workforce. I
think, aren't we at like 4.2 million?
Something like that, yeah.
Right.
But there was like an initial like rush of like 2 million, something. It's so many.
So many, because they were like, wait a second, I have to be home with my kids all day and do my work? No, thank you. Right.
And we want you to work an additional 10 hours and make sure your kids aren't heard or seen on the camera.
Right.
And learn how to teach 3rd grade.
Hello. Hopefully it wasn't algebra.
Dude, it was the new math. It almost killed all of us.
Oh, the new math is so bad. Don't even get me started, because there's no research to substantiate the Common Core math is helping kids.
Oh, so off of our podcast, if I say that I love it.
You love it, Suzi?
I do.
What the hell's wrong with you, Suzi?
So many things. Would you like that chronologically? Because it goes way the fuck back.
But for most kids, it's not been proven. The research does not show that it's helpful. You know what I mean? And especially my smarties. My smarties, they don't want to show their process. They just want to do the math and move on. Yeah. Slows them down. You know what I mean? Like it's cuckoo. So we have to talk about, we have very overwhelmed parents. We have parents that have no tools, right? They don't know what the hell to do with their kid who's struggling. And so we've moved into this culture of parenting where kids aren't autonomous, right? I call it bubble wrap parenting. Like, we don't want our kids to experience a bad grade. Yep. Yes. Cuckoo. Yes, I do use the word cuckoo. And this, and that's appropriate because we're all being cuckoo, right? We're all taking part of this. We're drinking this Kool-Aid that our kids, if they have straight A's, they can't have mental health problems. They can't be depressed. They can't be anxious. They can't be suicidal. God forbid. No, you have a straight A. It's not possible. That's bullshit. You know what I mean? That's what I see every day. That's what people, and it's good parents. They just don't know. They don't get the connections. Like, oh, my kid's sleeping when they're not studying. They're sleeping all the time. Oh, they stop making friends. Oh, they throw up Sunday to Thursday. They have constipation. They have, you name it. They got all those somatic things that are reflections of stress. But, well-meaning people, nobody told me at school that, he was pulling his eyebrows out. And I'm like, but didn't you notice he didn't have any eyebrows, right? These are all signs.
That's so interesting that you brought that up. I have trichotillomania.
Oh.
And I have trichotillomania too, which means not the scalp hair pulling, compulsive hair pulling, but it is one of the symptoms of my CPTSD. And that was, it's a freaking stress disorder,
Right.
And so, yeah,
Very common for people who have underlying stressors, right? Could be PTSD, and they call it body focused repetitive condition, right? And sometimes people think it's OCD. It doesn't have to be, and it can be its own thing, but it's very stress based. And you're just seeing kids doing more and more of these things. And I think one of the biggest misnomers about mental health is that you're not functional, right? So that's not true. Most people are highly functional, and especially with those, what I call internalizing conditions like anxiety and OCD. We don't know what the hell's going on in the inside unless they're breaking down physically, or you happen to have a kid who's like, Mom, I am so anxious today because of this. Well, guess what, guys? That takes a lot of parent work and a lot of emotional centered language and safety in a household to get there. And everybody can achieve it when we shift how we're talking.
Yeah.
In the beginning, you said they have to see the signs. What are those signs?
Yeah. So
what should Marie be looking for? Because I'm not a mom.
Yeah. So, but even just with anybody that you care about, right? So all mental health disorders occur along a continuum, right? So we have internalizers, and externalizers. Here we are. So our internalizers are people we can't see what's going on with them. Sometimes we have clues, right? And so you can see stomach aches, headaches, chronic pain, those kind of things. Those are very common signs of anxiety. I've never met somebody with chronic pain who doesn't have anxiety too. Just never have, right? And so we know if there's not a physical basis, right? Your kid has joint pain, but they don't have arthritis or Lyme disease or whatever it is. Let's start thinking logically. Where's our common sense, right? Mm-hmm. So, my own experience, my dad is 83, but he moves, and cognitively, he's probably somebody in his early 60s. He can still get up and down on one leg. He's a bocce champion. And my mom had a stroke, and she's in a nursing home. And the same week, he started to have this feeling. He said, I started to get this weird feeling in my head. So what did they do, guys? Do you know what they did?
MRI, CAT
scan. MRI. MRI, every testing in the world. And then he's talking to me, and we're talking about my mom. And he's like, oh, this is the same feeling I get, when I wake up in the morning. And I was like, honey, it's stress. I mean, you've been married for 50 something years, So of course, all the testing came back. And what did they tell him? It was stress. And I was like, you guys, let's have a common sense instead of probably spending $15,000, right? That's right. Drives it is insurance, right? So our internalizers have worried thoughts. They have intrusive thoughts that they can't put the brakes on. They have all this kind of stuff bubbling. They might withdraw. And then our externalizers we see, okay? They're the ones your kids tell you to fuck off. I mean, all the time, not just once in a while, right? 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 Your kid doesn't do that?
The emotional response inside me right now.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I would go nuclear. I can't imagine. My child's 9.
Yeah.
And she's a good kid.
Yeah.
But I know she's got stress. She's been through massive trauma, massive loss. And you can see it. Her nails are down to the quick all the time. Right? There are little tells that she has. She used to hide under tables when things got overwhelming. And parents would look at me and say, well, look at how poorly she's acting. She's hiding under the table and won't get out. I'm like, she could be hitting other kids right now.
Yeah. And don't judge another mother, people. Offer help.
Yeah, exactly.
To me, that's her intuitively seeking protection.
That's right. Right. So
that's her doing self-care.
Yeah. And, I think one of the things parents think, like, we have these kids on this continuum of internalizers to externalizers and everything in between. And nobody wants an externalizer. But the great part about having a kid as an externalizer, punching holes in a wall or doing something, screaming hysterically is, something's going on. You can't ignore it, right? But yet when a kid bites their nails down or is pulling out their eyebrows or all these other things, parents sometimes they don't see that. They may not understand how that is. And one of the biggest fallacies is kids today are so verbal. They're so bright. This is my 30th year in mental health. And I feel like kids are brighter today than they were because they're just open, right? And they're talking about stuff. But your kid, unless you have had ongoing dialogue about feelings, thoughts, and body sensations and helping them to connect all those things together, they're not going to come to you and say, Mom, I broke up with my girlfriend. I'm feeling kind of depressed. Maybe even at times thought about hurting myself. And I think it'd be a great idea if we called a therapist. That's just not going to happen unless you've done all this pre-work. And so parents will be like, I didn't know. And again, I'm not shaming parents. We can only connect the dots looking backwards, right? But every day people come to me going, oh my God, all the signs were there. So it's important to understand that they're not going to always tell you. If your kid comes to you and says, I need to see a therapist, say, fantastic, I'm going to get you one right away. Don't say, oh, I don't know about that. I mean, you seem fine, please.
If my nephews or nieces said that to me, I'd be like, oh, that is shocking amount of clarity. Fuck yeah, I'll make a call.
Yeah.
I'll make all the calls.
Holy crap. If you are cognizant enough of your processes and you're finding solutions, do that.
Absolutely.
And I do want to bring up one additional tell that was a surprise to me. And I went through it. By the time I was 13, 14 years old, I started getting blisters all over my hands and feet. I still have steroid cream next to my computer because it's a stress reaction. When you are stressed out, your body produces cortisol. Your skin is your largest organ.
That's right.
So it pushes it out and you have more pores on your hands and feet than you do anywhere else. And I went to a doctor, and that doctor, when I was in my 20s, and she was like, oh, this is stress. And I was like, you're out of your mind. I've never been stressed.
That's cuckoo, you said to her.
Yeah, it's cuckoo. Dr. Rose said it's cuckoo. Done. But I'd been working 2 full-time jobs and putting myself through school since I was in my teens.
Yeah.
And I had no anchor or understanding for what stress was.
Right.
And additionally, you were living in an environment that made working 2 jobs in your teens the right thing for you to do. So that wasn't just what you were doing. It was the whole damn system.
Yeah.
It wasn't
right.
Yeah. And, I think, when we know what to look for, which please get Dr. Rose books, she's going to give you a huge amount of insight on how to identify those pieces and just how to show up like a grown-up, because that's what our kids need. They need.
Well, and it's just, again, I mean, my book, It's Going to Be Okay, is really written to give the resource to parents and really talk about these pillars of mental health that we're just not talking about, because our mental health system, without getting into politics, is 100% a medical model dictated by medication.
Yep.
And it's all based on money, and it's not going to help you, right? Even though we think that's the magic wand, promised land. But it's not. And so we have to know that you are the CEO of your own health. You're the CEO of your child's mental health, and you can have the tools to do that. And as overwhelmed as you feel, because that's what I want to say, I know people overwhelmed. It's starting one place. Like when you had that aha moment, you then said, well, what am I going to do about that? And you probably started with 1 or 2 things. And then
I broke up with the asshole I was dating.
Damn straight. That's why I don't do couples counseling, just so everybody knows.
So, speaking of being the CEO of your own life, we are all at a point where our executive function is fucked. And we are we've been in survival mode for so long that our limbic system is shredded.
Yes.
How are we going to see the long-term impact of this kind of limbic fatigue and survival mode?
Yeah.
In in our children's mental health. We've got a better chance of bouncing back because we can make those calls. We can act like a grown-up. But
if we choose to do that, Marie.
True. I mean, listen, I believe that you take 100% responsibility for everything in your life.
That's right.
If you choose to live in illness, then that's your choice.
Right.
But I've talked to parents who I may or may not be related to, who have said, I don't want to take my kid to a shrink because then they'll get a diagnosis and they're worried about the stigma. And I'm like, oh, I don't care what you call the thing that's going on with your kid, but these symptoms should not be ignored because of stigma, because of like, how do you, they'll say, well, they'll just put my kid on drugs. I'm like, well, they might. So how do you, I'm sure you've maybe heard that before, Dr. Rowe.
Well, Suzi, thank you for bringing that up, because it's a conversation that I have with probably 50% of the people that come to me is like, should we tell the school about this? I mean, they're going to have a diagnosis. And I'm like, first of all, let's talk about your kid. Your kid is well aware that they don't feel good inside. They don't need somebody to tell them that. And when we talk about the neuroscience of whatever's going on, OCD, anxiety, maybe it's just stress, right? Just like you talked about. I talk about it with 2-year-olds. I make a brain, and this is the brain, and I explain it. And then I talk about the hijacked nervous system, what happens to the limbic system. And it's not just the limbic system, right? So our limbic system interprets stress, starts the cortisol going, our frontal lobes, which is where executive functioning comes in and attention, puts the brakes on. And then if neither of those work, our occipital lobe actually then comes in as an emergency e-brake and floods our system with feel-good brainwaves. The problem is none of these things are working on the brains that I see on a QEEG brain map because everybody's in overload. And I love that you said shreds, right? Like it's just in a rev state. Our brains are in this rev state. So when we talk about this with kids, right, that's the most important thing, right, is we have to explain to them, this is what's going on. We talk about it. I mean, and in our house, obviously I'm a therapist and we talk about these things really openly. I have my younger kid is sort of like a little Buddha, and my other kid is, impulsive and, struggles still with his Lyme and all this other stuff. And when the little guy, who often doesn't get upset, but when he's frustrated, I was like, Max, he can't put the brakes on in his same way and this and that. And he's like, I know, Mom, but sometimes it's annoying. And I'm like, heck yeah, it is, And I'm like, what are your tools? So backing it up, we have to have honest language about it. And it starts with parents because they have their own generational misconceptions about labels. And as far as medication with kids, I do not believe ever it should be used as the first line of defense. We should never, ever, ever be the first thing we do is put our kids on meds. And that's what happens every day. And why? Because I'm a science nerd and my book has 40 pages of research citations. That's 70% of the time, meds are used what's called off-label with kids under age 18. And that means there's no research to substantiate the efficacy of that medication for that clinical condition. I am not okay with that. We're talking about developing brains. And the
Holy
research
crap, that's horrific. Are you kidding
horrific.
me?
No, I'm not shitting you. And
no, that's like fucking abuse. That's like,
it is. And what happens is we're all perpetuating this belief, right? So the medical doctors, they don't have any training. The conditions we just talked about in the science, zero training. You know what their training is? Their training is the psychopharmacology. So they don't even really understand the nuances. What does it look like when you can't pay attention and, executive functioning? I'll talk about what that is. But essentially, it's like you're walking around with 20 tabs open all the time and nothing is able to be completed. You can't plan things. You start this, you can't finish that, you do that. We're all feeling like that. But there's some people that
buffering.
You're like, I got 67 tabs open, Roseanne.
Yeah.
If I could get the little spinning wheel of death, in the middle of my forehead.
Right. And we're all sort of feeling like this. It all contributes to our rev state. And, I talk, our new motto or our slogan is happy, calm brain, happy family, because I talk about that you have to power down to power up. And nobody is working on regulating our nervous systems. And people somehow think you're going to just take this pill, right? So you've got a kid who's angry and impulsive and easily upset, sensitive, screams every time you put the socks on, everything, all that kind of stuff. And you think, I'm going to take this pill and it's going to calm them down. And maybe it will, probably not. 100% of the time there's side effects and you don't know what it is depending on each one. But what are they learning? Right? Like, what are they learning? What skills? Because our kids today have no stress tolerance. And that is the underlying problem of our mental health today, is a lack of stress tolerance. And adults are as poorly developed in this, watch the news every day, as our kids. And they're getting that message loud and clear that you don't get your way, and I don't want to oversimplify it, or you don't get that grade, or you're this or you're that. It's just you're not able to tolerate anything uncomfortable, and you don't develop skills on how to manage stressors.
I can't imagine what stress tolerance would actually look or feel like for me because of my wiring. So can you describe that?
Yeah. So
what does that utopia look like? Because I can't even imagine.
No, but absolutely. And please know that, I worked with the children and the families from Sandy Hook. I've worked with families from 9/11, and many, many people with trauma, right? Oh, my Oprah picture. That was an awesome experience, by the way. And here's what happens. Let's do a little trauma education for you, Suzi. There's
I grew up in a religious cult, so it sucked.
Wow, and you made it. And you got to the other side. How amazing! I hope
that's
you
why
realize
I'm going to fucking law school.
Yeah,
because I can fight, so I'm gonna. So that's like I don't have a pre-trauma identity. Because
you
I was born into that. So that's why I say I can't even imagine. So I'm going to stop talking.
So your safety was taken and your body sensation. So just so everyone can understand what happens when you have pre-verbal trauma. Okay. So when you have trauma before you speak, your body doesn't know how to find a rhythm. It doesn't know what comfort and safety is. Okay. And when you get exceptional people like Suzi, like I can get verklempt even talking about this, somehow there is something that is indescribable that happens where you are guided from above. I don't know what it is. We don't know what that inner resilience that says that, right? My dad was like this. He was beaten in his sleep anytime he did anything minor, right?
Yeah.
And he just was like, damn it, I'm going to be a good person. I'm going to do these things and I'm not going to do that. Right. And why does that happen with one person and not another? We don't really know the answer, but I can tell you that every person I know, somewhere in them says, bullshit, I didn't fucking deserve this. And I'm going to do something different. Right.
What I say in my recovery is that the abuse wasn't my fault, but my well-being is my responsibility.
Right.
And so how do I live a damn life?
Right. So you would have to, so there's a type of therapy. I hope that you do this or have it. It's called somatic experiencing therapy. And somatic therapy and hypnosis are two types of therapy that sort of predated medication. Right. And so what is somatic therapy? It teaches you that your body is your anchor. And that our body is the clues that tell you when, danger, Will Robinson, like something is not right. Your body gives you those clues. And I know you know exactly what I'm talking about, Suzi, because you get activated all day long. And so what you learn to do with somatic therapy, and that's part of one of our anchors in everything we do, is you learn what your window of tolerance is. So you learn that, what's your trigger? Like, I'm going to tell you that when somebody is really rude, I'm the person you want running your ship. I'm a great stress person, but somebody just is downright jerky and rude and goes out of their way to do terrible things, I can't stand that. It's very triggering for me, right? Logical. But for you, it might be a window closing, or it might be, gosh, Christmas, who knows, right?
Yeah.
So you have to understand what your triggers are and then know what are your resources in that window, and then not allowing yourself to get into that activated state. And I'm going to tell you that I have seen every kind of abuse survivor, trauma survivor be able to do this. And improve the quality of their lives, but it's wrong what happened to you. And as I say to every trauma survivor, I'm sorry that happened to you. And I'm sorry that somebody took away your safety, but I'm also amazed by your ability to have that resilience. And it's really a gift. And to talk about it with others gives people hope in a time when people don't have hope.
I believe that abuse is cyclical. I believe that unhealed victims, survivors some of them, not all of them, become abusers.
Yep.
And so,
and maybe in different ways, right?
Yeah,
not in the
totally.
same way.
And what I've done is I've committed myself to talking about this shit, because I talk about it and then somebody will connect and feel less shame and they'll tell their story.
Yeah.
And
shame is a fueling behind every mental health issue that I can possibly think of. So I've got a kid with ADHD. Yeah.
That was amazing, Dr. Rowe, because when you look at that from the bigger spectrum,
right,
not only is it shame for the person that's experiencing it, but the parents are going to take that shame. The spouse is going to take that shame. Like, people take ownership of somebody else's shit and almost enable it.
Yeah. The shame is the hope robber. The shame is the action robber. It gets people so flippin' stuck. And sometimes I want to shake people, right? This is my magic wand. I also have a wooden spoon around here because every Italian mother has a wooden spoon. But that's right. And so you have to, people our subconscious is in control. But we can influence our subconscious, right? Just like, I'm activated by these triggers, physically activated, and then my mind, and then my thoughts, and my body, and my feelings. All these things start getting activated. But we have to, the first part of getting better is wanting to get better. And certainly when it comes to kids, the parents are the CEOs of their kids' mental health, and kids are so easy to help. I'm telling you. You know what I mean? Like, I've never had a kid, like, parents are like, oh, this kid's never going to come here. Oh, what's happened when they die? Just bring him in here. You know what I mean? Like, and go to people who work with kids. Don't go to an adult therapist who did you a favor, because they're not going to be fun and they're not going to speak kid language. End of story. Right. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right. And it's important to go to somebody who's a specialist and can help you in that area. But also just know that it starts from within. It starts at home. And there's so many amazing things. And I know it feels overwhelming when you are overwhelmed, but you just pull in one thing. Maybe it's gratitude language, and you're going to do it straight for 30 days. And you're going to shut your mouth every time you say something negative, and you're going to replace it with a gratitude word. And you're going to check every day on how your body feels on a scale of 1 to 5. I promise you do it for 30 days. You're going to feel better.
Dr. Rowe has KPIs for mental health. Yeah.
Oh, I'm KPI.
Oh, Lord. Marie's going to put it in her CRM.
Oh, yeah.
So
I make everybody do 30 days and chart it from 0 to 5. Because people will say, oh, I don't feel better. I don't this. No. Do it for 30 days, people. No magic wand.
So the other day, my adorable significant other said, I wish she would just kiss me more often. And I looked at him and I said, well, how many kisses do you think on a daily basis would make you feel the way you would like to feel?
Oh my God.
And he looked at me like I'd lost my fucking mind. And I said, well, I want to make sure that I know, because I'm going to check in with you. And if you've gotten that many kisses on those days, did it provide you with the feeling that you were looking for, so that we know that it's going to actually impact the relationship? He's like,
you're going to be like 10% more tongue, 30% more kisses.
He was like, I just kind of wanted you to kiss me right now.
Oh my God, woman.
I know, I'm the worst. So listen, Dr. Rowe, we know that the parental stress has a lot to do with all of the work that we do. And there's a lot of extrinsic things. And one of the bases, the cores that we built around Forward Revolution is that we need to be able to take care of people mentally, socially, and emotionally first, because you are a human first. And then you've got your geniuses that you can share. What do organizations need to do to support children and parents' mental health? Because I know that I made sure that I got the best fucking insurance I could because I want my people to use it. It's hard to do as a business owner.
Yeah.
Beyond the insurance and making sure that there's access. Like, what can we do?
I mean, it's all about company culture, and it's also about educating. So corporations, little companies, they all have the power to talk to their employees about the best ways to manage stress, right? And when your brain is in a stress state, you're not going to be focused. You're not going to be productive. You also might be a nasty employee to other people. There's a lot of negative consequences of having stressed employees, and you're going to miss work. Right. So stress is the leading cause of people missing work. So when companies make an investment to have wellness programs, that anything related to stress education, right? Because people don't know, and also incentives for doing things like meditation, yoga, breath work, whatever. It doesn't have to be that hard. You make it part of work. It's important. That is how companies do that.
That's the thing, is like, it's one thing to have it, but you've got to find a way, you've got to make sure people engage with it.
Absolutely.
So many benefits that are offered that people are just like, they don't have time for because they're focused on their job.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not having your employees work 80 hours, people. Not a good idea.
You work 80 hours
and then to do that kind of stuff.
You can't mandate 2 hours of meditation to make up for the 80 hours we made them work.
No,
that's not balanced.
No. But what everybody does need to know is the science shows us that as little as 10 minutes a day of concentrated powering down, breath work, meditation, yoga, biofeedback, as little as 10 minutes does get you from a stress state and keep you down into a relaxed, what we call parasympathetic state. So I want to be clear about that, because people think like I'm going to a massage tonight, because I am. But you don't have to do that every day. If you can, that's great. But I don't think it's realistic for people. But 10 minutes, just so that if you're a busy mom or a busy employee, whatever, everybody's freaking got 10 minutes. I don't want to hear it. Right. Yeah. So it makes a difference. You show up as a better human being, a better partner, a better parent, a better employee. So you have control over that, and you can do that. But companies need to step up. I mean, this is a crisis of mental health. This is the crisis. This is the pandemic, is our mental health. It's not COVID.
Yeah. And it needs to be normalized and destigmatized in the workplace.
100%. Yeah.
And I know it's a different argument, but I don't think healthcare and mental health care should be tied to your employment. But anyway.
Yeah.
It's a whole other conversation, Suzi.
Whole other conversation. I just want to get that in there.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, we've also got to make the flip as leaders to be more focused on the outcomes as opposed to the hours that your ass is in a chair.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a report that just came out.
KPI, girl.
Yep. Who gives a shit how long it takes? I want the results.
Right.
And there was a report that just came out that the average workday is now about 10 hours, but we've lost 2 hours of productivity.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So we're
also spending I forget how many hours a week emailing. I think it's 5 hours a week of our life is emailing now.
Okay, that's a shitty way to end this, Dr. Rowe.
Yeah.
Let's bring everybody back up. So, Dr. Rowe, first of all, not only do you need to go get her book, It's Gonna Be Okay. Because, listen, we all need to get over our shit and just find ways to be more effective. But she's also got this incredible webinar that is free on her website. It's 5 ways to boost your child's executive functioning and attention at school. And if there's anything that we hear over and over again, it's when our child can't focus.
I talk about motivation. I explain what executive functioning is. Because again, I want people to have tools, right? So, and remember, tools are only good if you use them.
Can't do the push-ups for you. You got to do them yourself.
Right.
Make sure that you find and connect with Dr. Rowe. It's Roseanne Campana Hodge, and you can find her on Facebook at Dr. Roseanne Campana Hodge. That's CapannaHodge, and on Instagram at Dr. Roseanne.
Yep.
Make sure that you go to her website, Dr. Roseanne and Children's Mental Health. Guys, we are responsible for the next generation. We have handed them a system by which they are forced to play. So if we are not going to support them in how they can get through it mentally and emotionally, we are going to be dealing with the results, and we're going to be old and pissed off about it. So
true.
Suzi, you have something to say. I can tell it in your very essence.
So I am so thankful to have you as a guest. I love everything you're saying. And I think one of the most important things besides talking to you is everybody needs to have these conversations, because by seeing Marie's reaction when you talked about kids telling their parents to fuck off, now if that actually happens to her, there's a flag in her head that says, oh, she's having the worst day ever.
Right.
And now, and so she can go and as a grown-up handle her anger and ego and all that stuff later, but she could look her child in the eye and go, wow, okay,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other parents that will be told to fuck off. And I hope that they listen to this and get that in their head too.
Yeah.
Let's all start.
And please know, I'm not saying it's okay for a kid to say that to you, but
no,
it's what's underneath it that matters. And
you can't punish a child into mental health.
Right. Something is going on. Something is fueling that. Let's get to the bottom of that. So we break that cycle of them, not taking care of themselves and instead of attacking others, because that's going to start happening outside the home too. And, then your kid feels bad about themselves and they might get in trouble. And it just so many things.
And then they get more shame, and then they get more.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, take the personal. Of course, they're telling you to F off. It feels real personal, people. Okay. But put your big girl panties on or big boy panties on and say, I'm a mom or dad or a grandparent or a caregiver, whoever you are, and say, let me figure this out, and don't talk to people when they're heated. Let them cool down a minute so that their limbic system can get back down a little bit. They get the brakes working in the frontal lobe, and they can have a real conversation and make connections. So when somebody's heightened in their frontal lobes, they go offline. That means that they are not capable of good, rational thought or actions. So you're wasting your time, people. So cool down, have calm conversations after. And remember, this is not a one and done. These are ongoing conversations. So
what you signed up for.
Yeah. So Dr. Rowe, I know that we're going to invite you back.
Yeah.
The audience, please make sure that you find her. Also, make sure that you like and review these podcasts. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you want more of, less of, done differently. And we also want you to tell us if you think it's crap, but we're pretty sure you think it's awesome. Please make sure to follow us on all of the platforms. We thank you so much for being part of this. I want to say one last thing. None of us are making it out of this in the same shape that we were in. Have some grace with yourself. Have some grace with others. And for God's sake, don't be a dick. This is Marie Hale and Suzi Shattuck shining off from Clutching Our Pearls. Thank you so much.